Shithead, and Sarah. We had been best friends for a long time. We had been acquaintances for several years now, recognizing they have known my wife and I have lived in that home right across the street from theirs. Our mutual relationship was not just neighbors' friendliness or a friendly level of just a simple friendship. It was much like sibling-like relationship. The children all were of the ages, and it did not take long before my kid and the other kids in that age group made tender friends most of the times, seen playing in our compound or in the backyards, or even on the quiet suburban street where we resided. We were spending numerous evenings together, our homes being filled with the vibrations of the dinner laughter. Camping trips and other vacations during my childhood were usually a combined event, where both families of my parents merged together with no division into separate households. I genuinely had trust and affection for the speaker with the nickname Shithead. Suddenly, he was not just a friend, but a brother who is as dear to her as the blood that flows through their veins. We were always there for each other and shared each other's joy and success, and it could be said that we also shared each other's pains and losses as well. As for my spouse and Sarah, they were as close as 2 fingers on a hand, except for when my wife was attending to her many demands. Everything from recipes to the small details of one's life were discussed. Sarah and my wife became inseparable friends. It has been 5 months since I lost everything that was dear to me, and it was just great on the outside. Sometimes even a small, seemingly unimportant conclusion can catch us by surprise and hit us as hard as a sledgehammer to the chest. My wife, the lady I lived with for more than 10 years, the mother of my kids, was cheating on me with Shithead. Judgment was betrayal of the highest order that felt more like a scene from a fairy tale. I recall the very instance that my world completely fell apart. My dear wife one day left her AOL email open on the home computers that we use, which she seldom did. I was leisurely browsing through my personal inbox when all of a sudden, I saw the notification from her therapist. The subject line of the email said something like, "Session confirmation, you and Shithead." At first, I am confused as to what was happening. I went over the message several times, reading it in an attempt to read between the lines and try to change the entire meaning of it. Why on earth would Shithead be attending my wife's therapy sessions without my permission, for that matter? The more I tried to calm my thoughts, the more my mind went haywire, and I started getting this feeling in my stomach like I was going to throw up. And so, to ensure I got the truth, I continued reading through her emails. You do not wait long to establish more parallels with the therapist, everything indicating that Shithead has been going for sessions with my wife for the past 6 weeks. The implications were undeniable. When I learned the truth, I was very angry, betrayed, and heartbroken too. Insufficient evidence made me look to our account must active mobile phone. Here, spelled in stone, were the realization of their calls and messages and all the things that they had spiced up their interactions with. They had been sexting every day for hundreds of times starting from the end of the summer. It was nearly that time of the day and holiday when the rate of text messages was approximately 500. Adding to this, they had been sending these texts to each other right under our noses, with all of is present at the scene. At Thanksgiving, Christmas, the entire family came over, which we celebrated with good hot food and drinks. My wife and Shithead, while sitting across the room, were sending each other messages. This was one of the most audacity moves taken to draw attention of people towards the party. They had twisted what should have been happy family events. The kid had seen them lying and cheating right before their eyes. There's nothing worse than information getting in when it is most unwelcome. It was not merely the amount of contact they had with each other that was damaging. This is something they had been doing sneakily, and all this while, yes, you see, we were there with Sarah and clueless about the treachery going on right in front of us. Thanks for following my instructions. The toughest thing I have ever done is to confront my wife. I collected the evidence, and as I held the documents in my hand, my anger was fused with sadness. So one day, I presented her with the emails and the records of the text conversations, and she did not even bother to deny it. She cried and said the truth: she and Shithead fell in love with each other. She uttered the words I never thought I would hear. This particular climax of the film is invoked dramatically with the rejoinder, "It just happened. I don't know how, but I love him, and I just don't feel anything for you anymore. I'm sorry." Those words of hers were like a dagger in my chest. She revealed that their affair started during their trip with the school district. There was an incident in her hotel room, and from there, things got out of hand. They had planned on leaving both me and Sarah. They were going to leave us for each other and divorce us, while they didn't plan on moving in together right away because of the children. They would in time. They have even been attending a session with a therapist on how best to inform us of the sad news. But I wasn't fooled. Sarah and I were sure that they had no desire to tell us the truth. They were just going to let us stumble upon their affection for each other several months later, after coming up with yet another reason for the divorces. My wife abandoned me 2 months ago. I was left in a state of utter devastation. I cried every day. I was also very concerned about what it was doing to our children. Nevertheless, after so many tears and heartache, the desire to fight arose in me. They will not escape the consequences for that. I had been used in the worst way possible, and I was going to see to it that they suffered for it. 2 years earlier, Shithead had attempted to become a member of the Board of Education. He was an underdog, but with my assistance in the writing of campaign posters and preparations for the debates, plus my wife's acquaintances in the school district, he triumphed. He made the board his mission in life. He participated in all the committees, was present at all the functions. His new job was the primary cause of the affair with my wife, since they were always at school functions and other meetings. Thus, I understood that an extramarital affair between a board member and a school district employee can be very destructive for them. It might even violate district policy. This situation was made even more complex by the fact that my wife was a candidate for a big promotion at her workplace. She had just finished her master's degree in school administration and was aspiring for this promotion with the encouragement of her principal and the superintendent. I had all the evidence I needed. Texts in which one of the partners admits to the affair, records of texts they exchanged on a daily basis, and emails exchanged with the therapist. First of all, I thought of sending all this evidence via email to the board and the superintendent himself. Still, I worried that people would dismiss me as the sad, cheated wife who no longer deserved any better. Thus, I devised a plan. I made up a story of a furious friend who intends to go public with the affair during the next board meeting. I introduced this person to my wife and said that I attempted to reason with them and failed to ensure they won't embarrass the two of them again. Not surprisingly, Shithead concluded that his only choice was to beat the board to the punch and own up about the affair. The superintendent, a friend of both my wife and Shithead, advised Shithead to quit, and the latter obliged. Sarah shared with me that he was embarrassed and was almost bedridden for days after the incident. Thus, Shithead's resignation became the term goes around very fast. The superintendent contacted my wife and, in a state of distress, told her that it is no longer possible for her to be promoted due to political reasons. What she had struggled for was replaced by someone else, causing ripples of uncertainty and gossip around the district. The next day after she was informed, we went out to celebrate our son's birthday through breakfast. A parent approached our table and took her hand, congratulating her on her new position. She thanked them and then quickly left the room to go and cry in the bathroom. After a few weeks, I revealed my little secret to them, that there was never a furious friend. It was all me saying it threw them into even further despair. Words flew throughout our small town about the scandal. My wife, the one who was once respected and loved by all, her images was dragged in the mud. One day, carefree social figure known as Shithead became a reclusive person who rarely left his house. He was planning to move out soon to a small, dingy townhouse, his life destroyed. They said that they will do everything possible to remain in a relationship together. I told them good luck with that. This was a fact that it would be very hard for them to be seen together in town. Regarding Sarah and I, we bonded and helped each other get through these difficult moments. We relied on each other, supporting our kids on how to come to terms with what happened. I was still in a lot of pain and still crying each day. I, however, got my revenge on him, although this was a poor consolation for the betrayal of a lover. It was several weeks of whirl after the revelation had been made. Day by day, I had nothing but pain and anger in my life, interspersed with relatively sane intentions of providing for my children. I was a mess, but somehow I didn't have the luxury of being one. Not for their sake. They required such comfort now more than ever, and I was going to ensure they got it. He had resigned from his job, and my wife lost a promotion, so that created a lot of stir in the small town. Friends and strangers alike gossiped about me, and shopping for a gallon of milk was akin to a public state. My wife and I are not the celebrities people were dreaming about. We are the failures, scandal of the year. The children themselves, being still rather innocent pertaining to the entire scope of betrayal, felt the tension. I recall they posed questions that I am hard-pressed answering. The children wanted to know more about Mom, and John asked, "Why is Mommy not home? Is Uncle Shithead all right?" There were some things that I could not explain, and altogether there were only so many lies I could tell the kids. It was during this time that my girlfriend Sarah stood by my side and supported me unconditionally. Every day we spent hours on the telephone, talking, screaming, crying, and cursing, at times swearing vengeance on the killers. I would have sunk without these conversations, as I was drifting in the abyss of darkness most of the time. She herself was going through the same process, wasn't she? I was no different from her. We both left our spouses with broken lives, trying to find ourselves anew. One evening, while I was planning to go out with Sarah alone, we agreed to meet at the park. It was a sort of a tranquil place, and implicit to the fact that it was so isolated, the children were able to run around as we engaged in conversation. Both our families had a memorable experience to associate the park with. We had spent many happy moments in the park just picnicking, birthday parties, etc. It was their sanctuary, a haven from the gazes of the people in the town now as then. One day, as we were out with our children at the park watching them play randomly, Sarah fixed me with determination. Something like, "We haven't thought about what we should do with ourselves next." It sounded like she was talking, but then the messages started. "This has to be the end of our story," I whispered, as the world crumbled around me, tears streaming down my face. "We can't let them take everything from us." I nodded my head in agreement, for, somehow, his words reverberating a dim light of hope in my heart. "Yes, we have to move forward. For ourselves, yes, but more so for our kids." The rest of the evening was devoted to consultation of the possible strategies. For the last couple of years, we knew that divorce was going to happen, but still we wanted to do it in such a way that our children will suffer less. We discussed baby malleability, legal shared parenting, adoption, and a new start. It was a challenging task to undertake, but at least I had a little spark of hope, which I had not had probably for the last few weeks. As much as both of us were aware of the stormy period that lied ahead, or perhaps because we were both aware, we booked ourselves for individual and joint sessions with a therapist. One of the reasons why it was crucial to address this problem was the fact that the couple felt like they were in the middle of an emotional talking and needed a third party to provide them with guidance. There is always certain struggle in the first few sessions, when the patient cries and releases the tension, but by the end of the day, it was very helpful. Our case was unique, and the therapist took the time to assist us to overcome the anger and the loss that we were experiencing. However, consequences of the affair ran deep all through the town and remained felt at specific institutions. With their mother gone, Shithead's wife Sarah was isolated from a few groups of friends. The idea of friendship was broken, as friends they had once called friends withdrew from them, unable to defend the image of an ideal couple they once had. My wife also had her portion of loneliness, or rather isolation, perhaps due to her working nature. Though she probably still worked in the school district, something had happened to change the mood. People who had once greeted her with a smile would stand away and murmur when she passed them. One day, I received a phone call from an unexpected source: school district's administration, particularly the superintendent of the school district. He was a buddy of my wife and Shithead for many years. He sounded like a man full of remorse. "I wanted to talk to you directly," he said. "I have known your wife for many years, and I wish to say that nobody expected this type of scenario in a million years." I sat quietly, my feelings mostly hidden below the surface, although I managed to clamp my jaws shut to prevent any display on my face. "Well, sir, I finally got cut to the quick with the hospitality I was getting. I asked them, 'What can I do for you?' He sighed. I thought it was only proper to sort of explain myself and tell you I'm sorry it happened. I know telling you that won't rewrite history, but it did not feel right not to. Your wife was a productive member of the team here, and for things to turn out like this is unfortunate." While I acknowledged what he was trying to say, it was impossible for me to find solace in its words. "Thank you," I replied, trying to give my words a bored, dead tone. During the call, I only stayed in the car long enough to get off the line, and I sat there quietly for a long time after that. The superintendent's call had come with good intent, but it only brought home to me one thing and how my wife had destroyed every sphere of our life. For the time, I am still able to get into a new sort of groove after weeks bloomed into months. I kept on being loyal to Sarah, and I think that is how our mutual friendship developed. We made sure our kids had playdates because although we were in a lockdown, we had to make sure they grew as normal as possible. We also agreed that even after getting together, whatever our situation would be, we would always share it with one another and tell the truth without holding back. One evening when I was taking the children to bed, my daughter seemed to be looking straight into my eyes as if she was an angel. With her big brown eyes filled with tears, she looks at me and asks, "Daddy, I just want to know if you and Mommy will be all right?" This time her question then made me swallow hard because I did not expect it. I gathered some air in my chest and thought hard over how I could put it. "We're going to be okay, sweetheart," I whispered to her, knowing that she was tired and just needed some reassurance that things would work out fine. "It is as if we had changed our circumstances, but we will remain a family that is true. Mommy loves you very much. I do too." She nodded her head, indicating that she was done and looked satisfied with my answer. Then I kissed her forehead before putting off the light. After putting the key and locking her door, I slid down the door and started crying harder than I have ever done. This I promised to her. I wouldn't let us go through the same suffering we had Ilya gone through when we lost my husband. Everyone will survive. What was still lying ahead of the journey was still unclear, but I was confident that I can go through all that is required. Sarah accepted me, and with the love of my children in the next life, I would ensure that I revamped my life. Recovery was slow, but sure. It was testament of the fact that the journey to a new start was well underway. After some time, we commenced on the therapy sessions with Sarah, and little by little we were able to detect the glimmer of hope. In effect, we joined other people in the process of recovering from the pain that life had inflicted on us. We had achieved through our friendship that which might have seemed impossible in our situation, drawing strength and comfort from each other as humans. Above all, I learned to seek and appreciate those fleeting moments of happiness even in dire situations. My kids running around the house, spending time with Sarah and laughing with her, or just staying home in the evening and reading books. As such, these moments made me appreciate life as there was still beauty in life, and moments of joy, even in the face of adversities. One fine morning, as I was relaxing in from the television in the living room, a tiny spark emerged in my mind, and I suddenly came to know that from now it is my turn to decide my future. It is not anymore the betrayal which has shaped the future of my life. As for me, it was possible to decide my fate, my life, and act accordingly in a particular manner. Thus, with a new spirit to continue living despite the situation, I thereafter decided to change my life. I had to pay more attention in terms of acquiring success, and hence having dedicated my efforts towards working and setting new aspirations in my job. I also try to focus on communication and create new friends, and turn back to be friends with my friends. Thus, day by day, I sculpted for myself a different future, and one which undoubtedly held much hope. It's either in correspondence with the changing seasons that my view on resilience and living was altered. Even with all that had happened, the pain did not take over my life as it used to. I was using the experience as a way of life. And so, I had come to enjoy a level of satisfaction knowing well that real happiness was far from my reach. As for Sarah and me, stayed true to each other. Our friendship was strong and could not be severed. We had both been through the fire, and now, matured people emerged on the other side of the burn. We proved this by standing by each other regardless of everything that came our way, and I was glad that whenever things became unbearable, we always had one another to turn to. There was a newfound strength in me I never knew existed, and I had a purpose that was as real as the air I breathed. One thing that had become very clear in my life was that life is not the challenges that we encounter, but it is how we handle these challenges. With such knowledge, I was prepared to face the future as it unfolded, with unknown but interesting potentialities. Ending up like this, the time lost all perspective and the process of sifting through the remnants of my life dragged on. Just a blink of an eye, I was Kenley trying to swim in the sea of depression. The next, I was trying as hard as I could to grab the pieces of hope. That sort of betrayal never fades. It keeps festering, like a fresh wound which might always be tender and painful. But amidst all that, there must have been some glimmer of the strength inside me.